This is Frank Mandolini, and this is the Last Minute Wrestling Podcast. Hello everybody and welcome to episode number 47 of the Last Minute Wrestling Podcast. First of all, thank you for listening. Thank you from me, Frank. I am your host from Italy, Frank Mandolini, and this week has been amazing. We've been all over the place in the wrestling charts on Apple Podcasts, so don't forget to go there, rate, share, review, like, the old trope of the social media. Tell everybody about the Last Minute Wrestling Podcast. That's actually what you should do. And I am glad to announce that today's guest is none other than Joe Hendry, the Scottish wrestler who's been a mainstay now for a number of years of the European independent wrestling, who's been signed with the Ring of Honor Wrestling in the United States last year in the fall of 2019, and he is now in Scotland due to the pandemic that we know, but he is doing amazing things for Ring of Honor from there. I'm sure he will have plenty of time to explain that to you later on in this interview. But before we go to the interview, I want to tell you about Yubico. Yubico sets new world standards for simple, secure login, preventing unauthorized access to computers, servers, and internet accounts. The YubiKey from Yubico is a physical security key using two-factor authentication to protect your accounts. As more of us continue to work from home, it is more important than ever to protect your secure information. So what can you do to protect your account? Yubico is offering our listeners $10 off your next purchase of $100 or more using the code POD at yubico.com. That's code POD at yubico.com. Say hello to the YubiKey and goodbye to account takeovers.
Have you ever felt?
Are you listening?
Hi, I'm Tristan, host of The Tristan Law Show, and you can listen to my podcast where you currently enjoy this one and at TristanLawShow.com. The unique part about The Tristan Law Show is I introduce you to the personalities in and out of the pro wrestling ring. And you don't have to be a pro wrestling fan to enjoy my podcast. Don't believe me? Well, after you finish listening to my pod brother, Frank Mandolini's Last Minute Wrestling Podcast, search for and listen to The Tristan Law Show. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll be waiting for you. Enjoy the episode.
As always, I need to remind you that you can find the Last Minute Wrestling Podcast, all of my interviews, all of my previous interviews, including Rob Van Dam, Vida Scott, Matthew from Botchamania, and many more, on our home website, which is lmwpodcast.com, but we are also on every social media, just typing in at LMW Podcast. And with every social media, I really mean every, but mostly go on Twitter, because we are mostly on Twitter. And if you want to be a sweeter, just make a quick donation on PayPal, paypal.me/LMWpodcast, Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/LMWpodcast, or become a Patreon backer, patreon.com/LMWpodcast. You can use the code LASTMINUTE to have a 20% off of everything that you see on the website superkicks.com, grabsapparel.com, and the merchstand.co.uk. And I think that's it. What more do you want? More than that? I don't think so. Okay, now I'm cutting all the bullshit out because we need to go to our interview with the Ring of Honor star, Joe Hendry. Hi Joe, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thanks. Yourself?
Yeah, great. Now that I have the chance to talk with you a little bit, it's even better. Because I see you're wearing your Team Scotland of amateur wrestling t-shirt on.
Yeah, absolutely. If you get, if you go to the Commonwealth Games, you got to let everyone know about it as often as possible. So,
are you still training for the amateur wrestling?
It's funny you mentioned that. I've been desperate to get back. I would be going into the true heavyweight division now. Like, I'm a lot heavier than I was. I think I'd be better at this weight class. But it's really going to come down to, there's a lot of politics in amateur wrestling, even more than professional wrestling. So I'm going to have to fight scratch and claw to even be allowed to compete again, So it's, it's tough. However, it'll come down to, if it doesn't, as long as it doesn't conflict with my Ring of Honor schedule, and if I get their blessing to do it, which I think it would be great personally, because it would really enhance the Ring of Honor pure style if I could go and achieve some great things in amateur wrestling. That'd be great. But I've also had conversations with Scottish judo as well. I did judo when I was younger. I'm kind of curious about that as well. So it's just, as long as if I can fit it into my Ring of Honor schedule when I get back and they're cool with it. I want to compete in all grappling sports. I want to do jiu-jitsu, judo, amateur wrestling. I want to do it all. I want to try and I've realized that's my skill in life, is just to do as many different things as possible. So I think it would only help my wrestling.
Do you fancy some MMA as well?
I've thought about that a lot. I really did for a long time, to the point where I actually met with a fairly major MMA organization. Also came pretty close to agreeing to a fight, which I wish we had got done at the time, because it would have been the right thing to do at the time. But I just think that I look at where I'm at, how my life's gone by, I look at MMA and I see, I see there being a big risk of concussions, and, that's serious business. So to be honest with you, I love fighting. I just, I think getting hit in the head is just not for me. I don't know. Maybe I'll change my opinion one day. Look, if the right thing came up, if Logan Paul called me out tomorrow, I'd be there. But
he's calling out to everybody, so why not?
Yeah, why not? Yeah. Why not? Yeah, absolutely.
Why the hell not? You said, before we jump into the wrestling questions, you said an interesting thing, that you have a skill in life to adapt and test yourself in many different specialties, I would say. And I've always been curious to ask you about your career before wrestling, about your music career, because you said, and I think you're inspirational in that. I remember you said one time in an interview probably that you tried very hard in that field, and it didn't work back then, but then just fueled your motivation to try in another field, which is pro wrestling. That's really cool to hear.
Well, I'll tell you this. I think there's two things that there's two reasons why I've been more successful. Well, probably three, to be honest, reasons why I've been more successful in wrestling. One is I was more passionate about wrestling. That was number one. Music was number two, because I didn't think I was big enough to be a wrestler, which is crazy to think I'm one of the bigger guys now, But when you get into it, you when you're watching it on TV, you just don't realize. But also, I think social media has made a big difference. I think if social media had been what it is today, that we would have had a much better shot back then, because I was always, coming up with these campaigns, but there was a lot of gatekeeping in music back then. You had to be pals with this person, and I just rubbed people the wrong way. You know what I mean? For whatever reason, I just, I'm not good at networking per se. Just because I just want to get to the task. I have a confidence that I can do something, and I don't know. I guess I rub people the wrong way, and I think actually on a broader sense, I've kind of struggled with that mentally for a while. And I've realized now that I feel much better by just accepting who I am, and that's just part of my personality, and going, you know what, I'll take the good with the bad. I know who I am as a person. And I think, like, in today's day and age, it's difficult, because I think it's difficult to know who people truly are, because I think a lot of people portray themselves as, well, look at all this good stuff I'm doing. And it's like, well, are you posting that because it's good stuff that you're doing, or because you want the kudos that comes with it? And I guess on the other hand, though, but it's like, if you don't publicize it, then you're not putting that positivity out there. So I've always I digress a little bit, but I guess what I'm saying is, I've kind of now fully accepted who I am, the good and the bad. So I feel, mentally stronger. I think that's a part of it. But also I made a lot of mistakes when I was in the band. I'll give you 2 examples.
Yeah.
So basically we basically sold out the Picture House, which was like 1,000 tickets, in Edinburgh.
Wow.
Big deal at the time.
Yep.
And we hear from Biffy Clyro's manager, right? And I and our team had just managed to get a deal with, a sit down with a top level executive in New York at SONY.
Yeah.
So I'm telling you now, if I'd have put more time and effort into Biffy Clyro's manager, we would have taken off. I've got no doubt about it. I'll tell you why. Because we would have been probably opening for Biffy Clyro if that had happened. And the PRS royalties that you get, because they're playing to such big crowds, the PRS royalties are the same. It's based on time on stage. So that would have kept us. We would have got paid for doing that, and we would have built up a fan base quickly. But when that email came through, I was like, let's see how SONY goes. Let's see how SONY goes. Then we'll get back to him. And it's just too late, There was another time where we're pretty sure this is the case. We don't know for a fact. But I'm playing a gig in Whistle Binkies. Do you live in Edinburgh?
Oh, no, I'm in Italy, actually.
Oh, you're in Italy, right?
Yeah,
I don't know why.
I am.
It's just I thought you were like based here or something because you do interviews with all the Scottish wrestlers. I thought, you must be based here or whatever.
Yeah, I just happen to have known many people inside the Scottish wrestling community. So, which is a great community.
Yeah, it is. And so when I was with the band, we would always play at this place called Whistle Binkies in Edinburgh. And it was this bar where it was just, it didn't cost to get in. People were just having a drink, having a good time. And it was kind of like the garage in Glasgow of music. If you got over in Whistle Binkies, you could do it. And I remember I was playing gig and this guy in between songs came up and he went, he was like, so tell me about what's your influences and blah blah blah. And I'm like, I'm on stage and like I'm in the middle of this gig and I'm going like, I told him a few and I was like, thanks man. And then he kept talking and I was like, mate, can I answer these questions after the gig? And he walked out, right? And at the end, someone goes, Jesus Christ, that was Alan McGee. He was Oasis's manager. So I wouldn't call that one a mistake, to be honest, because I don't know for a fact it was him, right? But also, if you're in the middle of a performance, but the Biffy Clyro manager one, that was a colossal error. But then again, here's the thing: if I'd have gone down that route, I wouldn't be where I am, And I'm a great believer in that. My auntie always says, what's for you won't pass you by. And I think everything that happened, all the mistakes that I made in music, when I got to wrestling, I knew better,
Yeah, that's a great lesson to be learned, to be honest. Because sometimes we all think about, there's just one road for us, just one thing that we can do. And maybe that mistake will lead to something that you never even thought about it before.
Yeah.
That would be much cooler.
It's one of those things people say, anytime you fail, it's not a failure because you get experience. And it's like, it's so easy to say that, and it can be difficult to process that, but in time, it is true. My advice to people, I'm a big fan of Gary Vee. I don't know if you watch any Gary Vee at all, or who he is.
Yeah, I know who he is.
Yeah, but he's always saying, like, just try as many different things as possible. Find out what you're passionate about. And that'd really be my biggest bit of advice for anyone, is just steer into your passions. I think also, actually, what I would say, though, is you should go do your passion, but maintain a steady income on the side for as long as you can. Only go full-time when you have to. Yeah. I tried to do the whole full-time in music thing, and it was just a disaster, Whereas in wrestling, I didn't go full-time until I had a match with Kurt Angle. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah. And speaking of which, you had this match with Kurt Angle. I followed your career pretty much since the WCPW days because I was a big fan of that promotion, and I had the chance to know a lot of the people that now are signed to major companies.
Yeah,
I'll
tell you what, WCPW does not get the credit it deserves for what it did for wrestling. Think about everyone that went through there. The list is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And before we go to Kurt Angle, that I was there in person in Coventry when you won the WCPW championship and you smashed the poor Martin Kirby's head. But the important thing, the symbolic of that night, in my opinion, is that on that very same card, there was the last indie booking of Drew McIntyre, Drew Galloway at the time, and you had your coronation as a champion, as the heavyweight champion on the same night. Was that a little bit of a passage of the torch between two Scotsmen?
Do you know what? No one has ever brought that up until now. But yes, that's basically exactly what it is. So there was a void in the. This is the thing that people don't realize in wrestling. You can never be precious about where your opportunities come from, because that's just the way it is. Every opportunity I've got in wrestling is because someone couldn't make it or someone was leaving or whatever, and then that's your opportunity to prove yourself, you know? So when Drew, I don't think people realize how much Drew brought to the table, not just in his matches. Drew is, you know, he's the man, you know. The thing about Drew is when he was here, I call him the Undertaker of British wrestling, in that when he was there, it just, everything, you know, the quality of the show was lifted. Like, when I say the Undertaker, I mean, like, he was the guy that you would go to if there was, you know, you needed advice or there was an issue or you wanted feedback or whatever. He was the guy. And, you know, he was one of the people that I worked with that you had no choice but to get better. And it's hard. Drew has an in-ring intensity, and I remember him telling me one time, we were at ICW, and it was when we had like some tag interaction, and he said to me, he was like, you know, he was like, you're a hell of a talent. He's like, but when you work with me, I'm going to try and bring an intensity out of you. And when you, in the best way possible, I would say this has happened twice, where it just, Stone Cold Steve Austin says you have to believe absolutely everything that you're doing. Both Kurt Angle and Drew made me believe everything that I was doing. Those were some of the most fun experiences I've ever had in a professional wrestling ring. I wish Drew's, you know, this is the thing. Drew is such a great guy, to the point where he is, you know, where he is, and he will still he messages everybody on their birthday. No matter who, if he knows you, he messages you on your birthday. Yeah.
Really?
And I'm thinking, not even I do that.
Guy.
You know what I mean? It's like, he's you know, he's him. And I'm thinking, God, he's just such a great guy. I look up, you know, when you're an arrogant person like me, you don't look up to many people. But I look up to Drew in many ways. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to work with him. I worked quite a few matches with him in WCPW, and again, I think he forced me to go from just being the entrances guy to, you know, being a force in the ring as well. And yeah, I've got nothing but good things to say about Drew. People don't realize how much he brought to the British scene when it had its boom. I think, you know, sorry, my radiator's making a ton of noise. I don't know if you can hear. But
no,
it's cold. So the radiator's doing some extra time here. But the thing about, I tell you what, I'm just going to turn this off. It's pretty distracting. There we go.
Okay.
So thing about Drew is he just raised the level of everyone that was around him, and he kind of, he just raised the bar. So could be happy for him.
And what about Kurt Angle? I mean, with you, that at the time you had amateur aspiration as well as pro wrestling aspirations. That must have been like the perfect storm.
It was insane. It was insane. I remember when the match was talked about, and it happened because I think what had happened was ICW booked Kurt Angle, and you know the plan. So ICW booked Kurt Angle, and obviously it was Joe Coffey and Kurt Angle, and I kind of went to management and says, look, people, I know it's not me that's wrestling him, but people might believe that it's me. So I was like, let's do something where me and Joe Coffey fight for the right to do it. So I started doing all these promos about how you know, I was going to face Kurt Angle and stuff like that. So what happened was, actually, I've missed out the most important part. A year before this, a fan asks me, who's your dream match? And I said, Kurt Angle. And I just tagged him in it. And I remember, it always makes me laugh. There's a Scottish wrestler who, you know, says, I think you'll have to do a little bit more than that to get a match with Kurt Angle, which is hilarious. Obviously, tweet now deleted. But, you know, it's one of those ones I wish I'd screenshotted. But we both know. And I find that pretty funny. Yeah. But that's exactly what I need to get a match with Kurt Angle, because he DM'd me. And he says, listen, I know who you are. I know you're working hard, but you're not ready yet. And this is in 2015. He's like, if you work hard, maybe the match will happen. And this is like, I'm thinking, wow. But, you know, you're thinking it's a pie in the sky thing. So a year goes by. Then me and Joe Coffey are having this match for who's going to get to face Kurt Angle. So I'm doing all these promos. Yeah. Kurt Angle thinks it's me that he's wrestling because I'm doing these promos. And I have to tell him, I'm going, oh, Kurt, it's not actually me and you. And then he was like, oh, cool, you know, okay, I just like it because of the promos. And then I went to WhatCulture Management and I said, and I found out that they had tried to book Kurt Angle, and for whatever reason, it had been a no. Mm-hmm. So this is the ballsiest thing I've ever done in my career. So I went to Kurt. I said, listen, if you know, I might have a financier to put this match on if you want to do it. And he was like, all right, well, here's what I need. So he told me the conditions. And I went back and I walked into WhatCulture's office in person, sat down with, you know, the big bosses. And I says, listen, did you guys want to book Kurt Angle? And they went, yeah, we tried to book him, but he couldn't do it. And I went, huh. And I said, all right, tell you what, I can get Kurt Angle. But if I get him,
on one condition.
Yeah, I have to wrestle him. And I need everybody's word in this room that that's what happens. And I'll get him. And they went, all right, hey, if you get him, you can wrestle him. So then I went back to Kurt. Then Steve Linsky, who was kind of dealing with some of his bookings at the time, he got involved, and bookers at WhatCulture got involved. And then at that point, it was still like a, you know, such a small chance of it happening in my mind. But then it happened, and you're like, holy smokes. And then I remember being there in the ring, and I was looking across from him, my family in the balcony, and I remember thinking, I'm wrestling Kurt Angle. This is mental. This is mental. And I can't think, to be honest with you, I think, you know, winning titles is always special, but I just don't know. Like, this is the thing. See, when you've been in the business a long time, stuff that's a big, like having your first match when you first start is the biggest deal in the world. Yeah. But then when you have a few matches, it's less of a big deal. It's just part of the job. You know, it's like winning a couple of titles is a massive deal, but then once you won a couple of titles, it's, you know, whereas from where I was in my career to go, you've got a main event match with Kurt Angle, JR and Jim Cornette commentating, main event pay-per-view, family in the balcony, wrestling, your dream match. I just don't know if wrestling will ever give me a moment that was more of a kind of dream come true. And whenever I get, you know, frustrated in my career, I have to look back at that and go, you know, not that I am frustrated now, I'm well looked after now, you know, I'm super happy where I am. But I just mean in life, you know, you have to look back at that and go, very few people get that. So very grateful to all involved, and grateful to WhatCulture for that as well, because look, I was in the business 3 years. It was the 3rd year anniversary of my first match when I wrestled Kurt Angle. So, you know, it's a lot to expect from someone that new. It's a lot of pressure. And, you know, I think the issue I was having was I was put in a lot of situations I just wasn't used to. Usually when people have been on the indies for, you know, 8-9 years or whatever, then they get the big opportunity. They've had 20 Rumbles before. They've had, you know, 15 fatal 4-ways. They've had 12 ladder matches. Whereas for me, it was like, you know, it was a lot to deal with, and it was a lot of pressure. I think there was a lot of resentment in the locker room because, you know, but this is the thing I always defended myself with. And again, people will call it arrogant, but I think I was the best talker. You know, I'm quite confident at that time in the company. So I wouldn't, you know, I wasn't the best in-ring wrestler, but in my mind, that company was, you know, it was a storyline company. And I felt that I, you know, could make a case that I should get that match. But there were points probably where I think I had, you know, I'd have a good performance here, then a couple of, you know, not so good performances. And I think there were, well, I know there were thoughts of like, oh, is Joe the right person for this? And, you know, I'm glad that they stuck by their word. You know, that means a lot to me that they did. And actually, if you watch the match, very, very happy with that match. I think if you watch that match, that's in my mind, I think for someone that's only been doing it for 3 years, I think that's, I feel like I delivered. And that match was almost like a turning point where I went from being this rookie to, all right, I'm here to stay now. I think that match changed everything for me. And it made me realize, what Drew was talking about when he said, I need to bring an intensity out of you, because it reinforced it with Kurt as well, because he wrestled, when they say Angle's intense, you don't really know what that means until you wrestle him.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Shawn Michaels said that the only match he has always prepared for specifically is their WrestleMania 21 encounter. It's the only one that he prepared just for that man.
Do you know, I always like to show non-wrestling fans wrestling to get their opinion on it. Yeah. And my brother, who I work with on a lot of my stuff, he's not a wrestling fan, but he enjoyed Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And about your time in WCPW, I think that you did something that for a British indie company, it was not unprecedented, but it happened really quick, because I think that you helped elevating their title to that felt like a proper world title of like a major company, and you defended it around the world, because you went to Canada as well, which
Germany
is something
as well, yeah.
Which is something that conversely, to have like a WWE championship match being defended outside of America, it took like 40 years or something. So that's incredible for an indie company, I think.
Yeah, it kind of upsets me that what the WCPW's legacy isn't more well known, because I think they just did a lot to raise the standard of indie wrestling. For a while it was the biggest indie in Europe. It was maybe even the biggest indie in the world at one point. If you're looking at viewership, I mean, it absolutely was. I remember when in the first episode, it was like there were tens of thousands of people watching it live, tens of thousands, which, you get that happens now. But back then it was like, ICW was hot, Progress was hot, but like that kind of viewership was just, next level.
Yeah, especially because it had just started. But talking about what you're doing now, of course, now we are.
I know. I thought to myself, I was like, yeah, we need to talk about Ring of Honor. Let's put them over.
Yeah, it was then time. Unfortunately, you got stuck because of COVID. You couldn't compete for the pure championship tournament that you were supposed to be a part of. I'll just fire straight in. When will you come back to Ring of Honor?
I mean, that's just not really a question for me, because look, if it was up to me, I'd be, I'd be on a plane or a boat tomorrow. Here's the thing. It's like, it's difficult because the borders are still somewhat closed. However, the embassy can make exceptions, and I believe that we could make a strong case for the embassy to make that exception. It's just, everything is so... Here's where we have to give Ring of Honor a lot of credit. They've got this bubble that they have, which everything is meticulous. The testing, the safety, everything is top notch. So I don't mind if you want to go to 40 minutes, by the way. Like, take it a bit longer if you want to. It's up to yourself. I'm just noticing we're running low on time, but we should talk about Ring of Honor for a while. But the bubble that they have is incredible. So the levels of safety that they have for the performers is just next level. But to be that safe and that precise, everything has to be thought out and planned logistically. So it's not like I can just be like, hey guys, I found a flight, why don't I come over? It's like, no, they need to, it's very important that they go back and forth with the commission about who's going to be there, when they're going to be there, how long they're going to be isolating, all that. So I mean, I don't have any exact date of when I'll be back yet, but my best guess would be early 2021. But I mean, here's the incredible thing. I've got a show now called Technique Tuesdays that I do every week for Ring of Honor, where I really talk about the grappling techniques that are involved in professional wrestling. And we're trying to do something a bit different with that. Like, I can't really think where it's been done exactly like that before, and it's actually picking up a bit of steam. So really happy with how that's going. And I do online content for them and stuff like that. So they're keeping me. I'm being paid as normal. I'm still under contract. So very, very grateful for that. That is a loyalty to me that will not be forgotten, and it will be reciprocated for me.
Yeah, and you also had a great achievement during this pandemic, during this lockdown, that you became their #1 seller. That's
Yeah, for a while. Yeah, for a while.
Yeah.
So I actually don't know the recent figures, if that's still the case, but we were for a good, I don't know how long. I don't know exactly how long. It was at least 2 months. It may be 3 or 4. I don't know. But to me, for someone that's not there, and has only been in the company a year, that's a massive achievement, you know? So I'm happy with that.
Yeah, you should be. You should be.
Yeah,
because
you got to bring home the bacon for the people who are paying you.
Yeah, and that part of this success, I think that relies in. You said that before, that you're a very good talker, but in my opinion, you're really, really good at also marketing yourself, because you are kind of always like reinventing your persona, your character, let's say. And that comes across every time. The effort that you put really comes across. That's amazing.
I appreciate you saying that, man, because I don't know if people realize that it's funny. Like, I don't know if people know the effort that I go to in this world. I feel like it's up to the individual. It's like, if you can put yourself in a situation where you
Hey, thank you for listening. Before you go, remember that your actions matter. You can help build the LMW Podcast community by following Frank on Twitter and other social medias by searching at LMW Podcast. Visit the official website, which is lmwpodcast.com. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and a follow on Spotify. Extra kindness points for you if you become a supporter on Patreon, Ko-fi and PayPal, or if you buy some merchandise from the official LMW store. I've been Frank Mandolini, and you stay safe.